Hey guys, it's your girl Alicia here and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so I'm really excited about this video. It's all about my favorite books from 2019. So basically, I love to read. I love just, getting an insight to some of the greatest minds around the world, whether it be in present time, whether it be in the past. So just getting a kind of insight on their mind and kind of an insight, on what they're thinking, what their perspective of life is, their experiences, stuff like that. I find it just so interesting because if you think about it, how often do you speak to these kind of people? So it's basically like a one-way conversation. That's what I kind of think of it as. And I love reading books that kind of push the envelope a bit, books that show you the world is not, you don't have to take the world as it is, basically, which is kind of the themes of the books that I've chosen today. This year I read 33 books. Obviously I'm not going to go through them all, but I chose kind of like my top 5 from them, and they're all books that I feel like I've learned a considerable amount from them, and I feel like they would bring value to other people as well, which is why I wanted to make this video in the first place. So so I'm just going to go through my top 5 books that I've read in 2019. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first book is called A World of Three Zeros, and it's by Yunus, who actually won a Nobel Peace Prize for his work on eliminating poverty in Bangladesh. And this was actually through his concept of social business. So a social business is something that's in between a for-profit and a non-profit. And his kind of theory is that, the current economic system is based on really selfish parameters, and he goes to say that a lot of people aren't really like that. They don't really operate on a selfish need, and it kind of is true where a lot of businesses, a lot of our economic system is really all about revenue, how much money we're making, how much profit we're making, not on how we're impacting life, how are we improving the value of people's living standards and stuff like that. And he says that it is possible to help people, and it is possible to generate some sort of revenue at the same time. He actually created a bank that did microcredit. It gave out loans to poor Bangladeshi women who usually wouldn't get a loan at a normal bank, and that was just because they seem to be high risk and undependable. They can't afford to pay it back. His actual bank has better repayment rates than the majority of banks, which he goes on to say. And it's just amazing the things that he's done. Is through the concept of social business, he's created so many different businesses in all sorts of sectors, and he actually goes into detail on how different sectors can be impacted by social business, from government and politics, banking and finance, the education system, and so on. It's so interesting just to see how much work he's done and just his ideas and his concepts. It's really interesting to just to read about it, even though it might not happen. I don't know, I can't imagine a world operating on empathy. It seems a bit far-fetched in my opinion, but I still loved the book regardless. And it goes on to say how the current capitalist system has created immense advances in our society, based on technology and stuff like that, but it's also created this big wealth gap between the rich and the poor, and how do we address that? And it might not be the best way in the future. So it's really interesting to read, and it's really refreshing, and it just, again, as I said in the intro, it kind of opens your mind to different possibilities, and how there might be a different way to make money. There might be a different way for society to be in, and it's all about opening our minds to different ideas and different concepts so we can implement it in our own lives as well. So it's a really good book. Okay, so book number 2 is Can't Hurt Me by Goggins. And when I tell you that there were moments where I was left speechless, like, it's crazy, this book. This book is just a kind of autobiography on Goggins' life and how he became the man that he is today. And the stuff that he went through and the stuff that he's done, you know, you would think of it as physically impossible. Like, he's ran 100 miles without no training, and his legs were broken. Who does that? And he just goes to show how, you know, a lot of things that we do in everyday life, we kind of limit ourselves with our minds. And he really goes on to tell us about, you know, how when we think we're at our limits, we're not actually at our limit. He says something like, if we're, you know, if we want to stop, we're probably just 40% there, and we can push an extra 60%. And that's basically what he does throughout the book. He pushes himself so much that he does things that you would think are physically impossible to do. What I really love about this book is that for him it wasn't a straight path at all. You know, once he made a goal, he, you know, tried to do it, he fell off, he tried again, but he always managed to get back up. And just that resilience and that determination, you know, it's infectious. You kind of read it and you think to yourself, what am I limiting myself from doing? You know, what can I do if this guy can do this much? You know, maybe I can do like half of it even. One story that I love as well within the book was he was trying to get the pull-up world record, and you would think, because he's done so many things, he's ran so many ultra marathons and stuff like that, and he's trained so hard for this, that, you know, he's gonna get it. First time he didn't, and then he just goes through like the process of, you know, what did I do wrong? How can I implement it next time? And he tries again, and you would think he would get it second time, and he doesn't. His hands are like bleeding. He has to go hospital, and he's already thinking about, okay, how can I do it? You know, what can I do differently for the next time? It was a very public thing as well when he was trying to, you know, achieve the world record. So even despite that, he's still thinking about, okay, what did I do wrong? What can I do better next time? And it's just, again, as I said, it's kind of infectious, this book, just how motivated he is and just how resilient he is as well. So again, I really would recommend this book if you're looking for a little motivation in your life. Okay, so my next book, and book number 3, is Weapons of Mass Instruction. And Weapons of Mass Instruction was written by a former school teacher who, you know, retired after 30 years of education, and he kind of gives his insight on what the education is like and what it should be like. And it basically goes on to say how the current school system isn't as effective as it's meant to be. And, you know, it doesn't give space for children to be creative and to just think for themselves. And it goes into a lot of detail on, you know, the history of the education system, and, you know, just how it doesn't withstand in today's economy and today's climate as well. You know, there's a lot in the book that I actually agreed with. It delves into a lot of different topics and a lot of different things around the education system, which I feel like is an important part of everyone's lives. And I feel like it's a book that, you know, people should read and should be a bit more informed about. Again, going on from the theme that I have with this video, you know, it kind of opens your mind to different possibilities, and, you know, how the education system can be reformed or can be tweaked to be, you know, a lot better. That would actually help students a lot more, so they can actually have a space where they learn and be creative and, you know, not just do tests and follow orders and follow instructions. So again, it's a book that I would really recommend. So you might be thinking of adding it to your 2020 reading list. Okay, so book number 4 is Principles by Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is a successful businessman and entrepreneur. He has one of the, you know, top hedge funds in the world, and he's basically done a lot. And this book is just about, you know, how he goes on to say that there's nothing inherently special about him. It's just these kind of principles, which he goes on to explain in this book, that he's used throughout his life to help him navigate through certain issues and certain problems. You know, that's gotten him to the place he is today. And you know, I love the way he's written the book. It's really straightforward, it's to the point. You know, there's a lot of little gems that you can, you know, take in your own life. And one thing that you know, one of my favorite kind of principles from this book that I try and implement in my life is looking at problems as puzzles. And it's a really different way of looking at, you know, certain obstacles that you face throughout your life. So he basically goes on to say that, you know, you should look at life like a game, and each problem that you face is inherently a puzzle that you need to solve. When you solve that puzzle, if you encounter the same problem again, you'll know what to do, and that way you can kind of ascend to higher levels as you go on throughout life. And I found it really cool how he, you know, kind of looked at life and how he kind of, you know, tackled specific problems. And obviously he goes on to say it's not easy, but the more you do it, the better you kind of are, that kind of thing. So you know, again, it was really informative. There's a lot of things that, you know, you can kind of bring into your own life. So it's another book that, you know, I would recommend. He also has a video on YouTube where he kind of condenses the whole book in like 30 minutes if you know, can't be bothered reading it or you don't have enough time. So yeah, I definitely recommend the YouTube video as well. Okay, so my final book, book number 5, is Invisible Woman: Data Bias in a Will Designed by Men. And when I tell you this book will make your blood boil, it would literally make your blood boil. Some of the things I was reading, I was just like, really? You know, I was so like dumbfounded and shocked, which is good because you want to read a book and you want to be like, I did not know this. How could I have not known this? Which is exactly what this book did for me. And this book is all about unconscious bias and how men, not deliberately, but essentially have excluded women out of basically every part of our day-to-day society. What a surprise. And you know, it's mind-blowing. It goes on to say, like, you know, sectors just such as transportation to education to our day-to-day work life to, you know, wrenches, you know, that we used to build, they're apparently too big for women's hands. One thing that I read that was so surprising to me was that car crash testing that, you know, big car companies do, it's actually only tested on a male body. Females are actually 47% more likely to be seriously injured by a car crash. Like, how is that legally possible? It goes on to show how routinely women and their bodies are ignored from, you know, day-to-day planning. So when designers are, you know, planning things and designing things, they think they're including everyone by making males the default, when in reality, you know, there are some differences between us, and, you know, they're just designing it for men, and girls are just, you know, assumed to be impacted the same way. Now this is actually, it goes on to describe this, it actually impacts women on a grand scale. You know, it just goes on to, in a lot of depth, on how, you know, women are impacted in different ways and how women are affected by this unconscious bias. So yeah, so again, it's a book that I'd really recommend, you know, men and women alike, because everyone needs to know this. And that is the end of the video. Hopefully you learned something and you're persuaded to read 1 or 2 of the books that I've recommended, and add it to your 2020 list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you've read the books before, heard the books before, or if you want me to make similar videos like this. And I'll see you next time. Bye. I don't know why I did that.